Thank you, everyone. We'll call the meeting of the Local Government Subcommittee Task Force to order. I will note that all members of the task force are present. And so with that, we will get started. So you should have the agenda that was sent out to everybody along with six different committee recommendations. And what we'll do first is we're going to walk through each one of those recommendations, and then we can discuss a little bit there if you want, and then I'll open up to public comment, and then we'll come back and we will have a vote on whether we want to move each one of these individually through to the July 8th meeting of the Committee of the Whole. So, and at that meeting, then the Committee of the Whole will take a look at them as we've discussed in the past, and they can make some further adjustments to them or decide not to include them in our recommendation. So with that, if we could share the screen as we move through these, Ralph. So the first one let's throw up on the agenda is the require new voter approval of levies to receive 60% affirmative vote to be passed.
Okay, 1 second, please. And I had this all up and ready to go, but I can get to it a different way. Sorry. Somehow when I did everything here, it changed everything. But if I can find that email, it will work. Uh, so, sorry, the 60%?
Yes.
And share screen after telling Nancy how to do that. I am. That should be screen 2. Share. You should see
Perfect.
the file there. Let me zoom it up a little bit. Except, of course, the bar's in the way, as always.
There we go.
You don't need this. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ralph. So this one is it's pretty straightforward, just requiring new voter approved levies to receive at least 60% affirmative vote to be passed. Our strategy here is to encourage the state legislature to take a look at this and and see what they think on this particular item. Obviously, we all know as we've walked through, property taxes at voter approved levies are a significant portion of the property tax bill. And a lot of times what we have here is we have a majority of a minority of voters who turn out and vote to approve these. And that's not to say that there's an issue with those. Well, there is an issue with people not turning out to vote. I mean, a lot of times when they turn around and complain. So, but and then there are dissenting opinions, of course, on this. Mill levy elections are already a challenge to pass at times, and this will maybe further create barriers of passage and to these. So with that, I'll open up to any comments or thoughts that anybody might have on the committee. Just go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, DJ, go ahead.
Yeah, my first thought under the rationale portion where you're saying it to make it more difficult, aren't you actually just wanting more voices to be heard? I think it sounds like you're trying to raise a bar to make it harder for something to happen. In reality, you're just wanting to make sure that more people participate in the conversation for the community. I think that wording needs to be worked.
Good point. Kendall?
Yes, thank you. I was just going to ask, so I know that the Education Subcommittee recommended something similar, talking about supermajority or turnout requirements for mill levy elections. I don't think that their recommendation was very specific in terms of, what we're listing out here with 60%. Do we know what they've been entertaining as far as a threshold? Is 60% in line with what they're thinking?
So Ralph, what they're thinking of doing, if you refresh my memory on the numbers, there's already statute language about voter participation in certain types of mill levies. Usually if there's a 30% less voter turnout, I don't think they can pass the levy. Between 30 and 40, they need a maybe it's 60%, and above 40, it's only a simple 50% majority. That doesn't apply to everything. I think they were looking at moving that forward and applying it to all types of voter-approved levies. Is that correct, Ralph?
That is in keeping with what I remember. There was some, and it was, I think they got that language from bonding language.
Correct. Yeah, it's in the statute right now, but just applying that language all out to everyone. And then also in the statute, that language does not apply, I believe, if the bond is held on a primary or a general election. Or no, excuse me, if it's held for a mail-out election. I take that back. If it's held during a mail-out election, that doesn't apply. So that's where they're at on that. Commissioner Holmquist.
I was just curious if the 60% threshold is the number of ballots sent out or the number of ballots that have been received.
No, my understanding of this recommendation would be the number of yes votes on that particular levy. It's not how many ballots were sent out, it's just how many people voted yes. Instead of a simple majority, it'd be a 60% majority to pass the levy then.
So if only 30% of the voters send their ballots back, do you try to get to a 30% or 60% threshold on that 30% of voters that voted?
Correct.
Okay, all right. I guess the other thing is, you know, I hear it a lot on school elections, especially people, they just don't take this voting seriously and they don't send their stuff in. And I don't know, I believe in personal responsibility, so I'm gonna have a hard time with this one, I think. I think it's the individual's option to vote or not. And if they don't do that, it's on them. It's, you know, that's all, I guess.
All right, Justin Ross, you got your hand up there.
It sounds a bit like there's two different goals and we're trying to hit it with one arrow here. Like, one is like you want to set something for a quorum for there to be a valid vote on the topic. And the separate one is like, how much agreement do you need on this one? This one only speaks to the agreement participation, right? So like by itself, I think it just does make it more difficult to pass. It doesn't per se increase participation. Right. So like perhaps it should be amended to either change it to something, particularly like what counts as a quorum, what is the minimum amount of participation, or restrictions on when you can have an election so that it has to be at November elections or something like that. So I'm just throwing those out as possible ideas for thinking about this.
No, those are all good points. One of the items when we talked about having a particular turnout, a lot of these, especially school, city, maybe county elections, everybody gets a ballot mailed to them. So that's kind of the argument. Well, everybody has a ballot in their hand, so we have potentially a full turnout. They just need to return those ballots and get to the 60% of the items that were returned. So anyone else would like to speak? Senator McGilvery.
Yeah, I do think this increases turnout just by the very nature of it having a 60% threshold. People who want that levy will likely turn out in greater numbers. So I do think just by default, it will likely increase your turnout.
Okay. So DJ brought up the language, making it more difficult. Does anybody have any suggestions on what we might edit in there? All you wordsmithers out there.
I would just suggest voter-approved levies constitute a significant portion of property tax increases. This allows more voices to be heard before property taxes are increased. Something like that. Kind of like what DJ suggested, I think is.
Read that through one more time, Tom, please.
Well, voter approved levies constitute a significant portion of property tax increases, allowing more voices to be heard. Increasing the threshold allows more voices to be heard before property taxes are increased.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments on that particular language? I like that. DJ?
Yeah, I support that change as well.
Justin?
I guess I just don't understand how raising the threshold implies that more voices are heard. In one case, you hear 51% of the voices say no and it fails. And another, you have to hear 61% to hear no and it fails. Or 49, it'd be 39%, I guess. It doesn't seem like it affects the amount of voices heard, I guess. It's just, so it's just, maybe I'm just being too semantic on it. I don't know.
No, I would kind of concur with you somewhat. I've had bills in the past that went after this both ways. And when you look at requiring, maybe then more than a 50% voter return rate, or something like that, it always came back to me was, well, they all have their ballots in their hand generally because they either had an absentee ballot or city, county, and school ballots are all generally mailed out directly. So it's a tough one. I guess, drilling down into that might be something. This is just a recommendation to push forward. I'm sure if the legislature picks this up, those will be things that they'll really drill down into. Commissioner Holmquist?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Justin on that. I think that was a good point.
Okay. All right.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll just add real quick. It occurred to me. I think that maybe like consensus, like boosting consensus or raising the bar for that is kind of what we're aiming at. So not necessarily participation, but we're demonstrating that there's greater community support for raising taxes before we allow it to go forward.
Yeah. And I believe there's a number of states that have a super majorities on passing levies. In fact, I believe when California brought out Prop 13, Justin or Manish may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they went up to 65% voter approval rate when Prop 13 came into place. Justin or Manish, does that kind of jive? Is
I
that
don't remember if it's 60 or 66%, but it is some super majority requirement. I think the previous statement sounds correct to me that the rationale is that it requires greater consensus to increase taxes. Okay. That seems to clearly follow from the recommendation. So
okay.
I agree with Justin on that, Senator. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. All right, if there's no other comments on this particular one, we can move on to the next one. And then Ralph, while we're moving through these, if you could maybe have someone edit up the rationale portion. So when we come back and the suggestion coming from Tom McGilvery on that.
Okay.
I would just add that increasing consensus is totally good with me. I think it's probably better than allowing more voices to be heard.
Just under the rationale.
Nope. Sorry.
So under the rationale portion there, is that what you're meaning, Senator McGilvery?
Right. Yeah, I like increasing consensus better, frankly. That's really what we're trying to get toward.
Okay, voter approved.
Do you want to leave the language that will reduce future growth in property taxes? If you go with that kind of language?
I'm not sure that's kind of a bold statement to think it would reduce property taxes going forward. I guess it just requires a higher voter approval consensus. On some of the studies I looked at and the super majorities across I think there's about 17 states that require that. It didn't seem to have a large significant impact on, particularly in California, of levies not getting approved. I think one thing it might help would be, to me, always is, will local governments and schools be maybe a little more realistic on what they're asking for? Particularly in schools, what we have right now, a lot of times you'll see them come and, well, let's ask for 50 million. Well, the voters didn't like that. So then they keep ratcheting down until they get to that sweet spot where they can get voter buy-in on what they'd like to do. So where are we at here? Voter approved levy portion of property taxes.
You might say something, the latter part of that sentence would ensure appropriate growth or appropriate future growth of property taxes, or something along those lines, that it's more in line with what a community thinks should happen in their jurisdiction. Just a thought.
So where are we at?
So increasing
Now,
consensus.
It'd be before levies. Would something here. I see Rhonda has her hand up.
Increasing consensus and voter education prior to levies growing property taxes. Increasing consensus and voter education prior to levies growing property taxes might work. Because if you want 60%, you're going to have to do a little more education too for the voters.
Right.
The logic for increasing consensus is what? And that's actually sort of what we want there. Right? Because we've changed this language from requiring more people to vote to increasing consensus. So, I mean, because now this is all about buy-in for property tax increases.
Increasing. So increasing consensus and voter education for levies could reduce future growth in property taxes.
How's that?
You got any thoughts on that sentence?
Does that meet the spirit of what the discussion was on?
I think so.
So hand.
Not to beat this to death, but
Yeah.
I really think that what we're trying to get to here is we're looking out for the taxpayer and the homeowner and the property owner to keep property taxes within a reasonable threshold so that they're affordable. I realize we're trying to reduce growth in property taxes, but the real point is we're trying to keep property taxes affordable to our citizens. We're really looking out for them. And I don't know.
How much? So is this increased acceptance of property taxes?
Yeah,
With this positive language.
I'm not sure I like acceptance. So, Manish, what do you have up there? You got your hand up.
Thanks, sir. I hope this is sort of in line with what Senator McGrovey just said. I see reduce, and I really think this might be more about controlling the growth, so it's within a parameter. So I wonder if maybe control versus reduce.
Increasing consensus in voter education could control growth. Yes. I like that. Good change. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, maybe could potentially control.
Do we want the conditional?
Thoughts out there, anybody? Throwing potentially in there?
Here's one more stab at it.
Okay.
Increasing consensus aids in controlling the growth of property taxes, keeping home ownership affordable and prices within reason for citizens. Prices.
Can you email me that language since you're reading it from something? I can just paste it in.
I just typed it.
Yeah.
It's not right. It's not perfect yet, but if we want to move on to another one, I can continue to wordsmith this a little bit.
Seems like Kendall's is pretty close to that in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, look at the chat. Kendall's got some good language.
Yeah, I can read it.
I see it here.
Okay.
Increasing the voters ensure that property taxes align with community values. Ability, is that, you want to add ability into this? Let's try this one.
Yeah, I like
This drafting on the fly in committee is interesting. I think this is why we don't do conceptual amendments.
All right, right.
Increasing
I like what Kendall's written there, and I think what you just said.
and stay within the. Do you need ability?
Yeah, community ability. That's good.
Right.
I'm good with that.
Cool.
Maybe the communities.
Community's ability to pay for it.
And you're going to discover what a bad typist I am. So that's the amendment.
All right. Anybody got any more thoughts on that? Maybe we'll leave it and then come back as we circle back to vote on it. I think we're getting.
I think that's pretty close.
We're pretty close on that one.
Okay. For the benefit of people listening in, PDF versions of the original draft recommendations are posted on the committee website. They made it up a little while ago. I just got a mail about that.
Okay.
So which would you like to go to next?
Let's go to the next one on the agenda, new mills only as dollars and not mills. So as all right, Ralph's got that pulled right up there. So voted mill levy elections would be restricted to dollar amounts rather than mill amounts. So currently under state statute, a locality can choose either or. And so this is just recommending to do this. The rationale for this is when you have reappraisals that there's not a windfall should the local government decide not to drop the mills. Really haven't heard much on dissenting on this as we've worked through it. So anybody got any thoughts, comments? Commissioner Holmquist, got your hand up.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little puzzled by this in that right now, when we do an SID or a levy or whatever, in fact, when we did our 911 levy a couple years ago, we did do it in dollars, and then we convert it to mills when the taxes come, and we do that with I think all of our SIDs. It's a dollar amount converted to the mills because the mills move up and down so much. So this is a good thing. I didn't know that a lot of the counties didn't do that or whatever. It works because you get the money you need to do whatever you need to do and just adjust the taxes, which usually is fairly flat if you keep track of it. So yeah, it's a good thing.
Okay. And this would continue to allow that dollar amount be subject to 15, 10, 4, 20, and grow with inflation also. Senator McGovern?
Well, I'm going to pick on our wording again, but
Good.
the second sentence, restricting levy elections to dollar amounts requires mill levies to automatically adjust to reappraisal. I don't know if that communicates to me what we're trying to get to here. Because it sounds like when you automatically adjust to reappraisal, that's just business as usual. Everybody's property taxes are just going to escalate up. So I think restricting levy elections to dollar amounts requires, I don't even know that you need that second sentence, frankly. Maybe Kendall Cotton can wordsmith this better for us here, but do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, I understand it. I mean, when I read that second sentence, to me, it's like, yeah, it automatically adjusts to reappraisal. So as appraisals go up, you need less
Mills.
generate the same amount of money, so the mills will drop down.
Well, I agree with that, but that's not what that sentence says.
That's what it says to me, but
I know that's because you think like you think. You're always thinking that it's going to go down. I'm thinking, well, it's just going to go way up.
It could potentially go up. I mean, if let's say appraisals values drop significantly, the mills will go up, but they can never raise. Let's say it was for $1 million, and that's all they want to raise is $1 million, and so when appraisals go up or down, you just adjust your mills to still hit that $1 million, is what you're still doing. Kind of like Commissioner Holmquist just said, when they pass their dollar amounts, then they adjust. It's like a bond levy. So I need $5 million to pay my bonds this year. Now I know what my appraised values are, and now I have to adjust my mills up or down to raise that $5 million of debt service.
It also helps with transparency, it seems like, because if you're only talking about dollar amounts, then people can have a more tangible grasp of like how much money they've authorized the government to collect.
Here's what I would say. Restricting levy elections to dollar amounts requires mill levies to automatically adjust to those dollar amounts.
I see what you're getting at. So restricting levy elections to dollar amounts requires mill levies to automatically adjust up or down in order to generate the dollar amount requested.
Something like that. I think that communicates to me better.
How about you take the requires out and, I just lost it. It allows mill levies to adjust to it's where you guys were headed, trying to maintain the same revenue amount. But in that case, does it require or does it allow? One thought. But we need a last clause.
It requires mills. I don't know if you need to say mill levies. Can you just say mills? It requires mills.
Yeah.
To adjust up or down to raise the same amount of revenue.
To raise their voted revenue amounts or something like that.
Yeah. Restricting levy elections, dollar amounts requires mills to adjust up or down to raise.
About maintain
Yeah, maybe.
current authorized revenue levels.
Yeah.
And I'll fix all levels. Mills.
Mills.
Mills to automatically adjust to maintain levels authorized by voters.
How's that?
That's good. Perfect.
This performance drafting is
Perfect.
pressure.
You need a 2 in there.
To
After mills,
adjust
two
to main
mills, authorized dollar amount.
requires mills to automatically. Thank you.
Yeah. That's better. I like that better.
All right. Any more comments on that one? Thank you. All right, let's move on
Hey,
to.
I'm sorry. Could I say
Oh,
something? Sorry.
hold on.
I tried to send a chat, but I'm not having
Oh,
any. That's
I wasn't looking either, so
okay.
sorry.
There was a question by a person up above about how the dollar amounts are set, and I just want to say we take the dollar amount needed and adjust the mills each year based on the actual cost of the project. That's how we set ours, and it varies every year depending on what the costs were the year, in the previous. And the other thing is you talked about SIDs being under 1510 420, and I didn't think they were, so I texted my finance lady and she said they're not under 1510 420. They're under 7-12-41. What she said. Because SIDs are over and above
Correct.
what we get at 1510 420.
That's correct. That's completely different than a normal levy.
Yeah. So anyway.
So there was Dr. Ross put a comment in here I just noticed too. Replacing fixed mills with fixed levies prevents property value appraisal growth from automatically becoming higher tax spending. It was what his comment was. And I think we've picked up that notion too. Is that correct, Dr. Ross?
Yeah, it's fine. I put that earlier before you had worked it
Sorry,
out.
I missed it.
No problem.
And I thought I saw Commissioner Holmquist raise her hand, but now it's gone back down. Okay, so I'll save this one. This is draft 2. What would you like to go to next, Senator?
Senate Bill 511 recommendation.
There it is.
Yep, thank you. This one has to do with modifications of 1510 420 and with our encouragement to pursue the 2023 legislative session bill of 511 as a starting point, and adding to that population growth adjustments and the elimination of bank mill authority should be considered. I'm not going to go through the rest of it. If everyone wants to take a little bit of time to read the rationale, and seems where we've been getting wordsmithing done.
So I have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
On that, oh, I guess tool you sent us, what is how does the population adjust, or what's the formula for population adjustment? I couldn't quite figure out how they're figuring out population. Are they taking just the census every 10 years, or are they doing I don't know.
I don't know if that has been defined really in the formula, other than it needs to be a factor. And I don't see Dylan, any of our.
I could probably answer that.
No,
Please,
Eric,
the committee.
Eric,
Yeah. So the census comes up with estimates. The U.S. Census comes up with estimates every year, and those are the numbers that we used in that tool. So to think of it from a formula perspective, if the population grew by 2%, whatever growth you were allowed would be multiplied by an additional 2%, if that makes sense. If that's the way the committee wants to go.
Yeah, just a kind of a speculation of how it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
And obviously, if the legislature picked this up, those would all be items that would be really run through the formula and kind of come up with what's the number, where do you get it, when is it adjusted, etc. Does anybody have any thoughts, comments on this particular recommendation?
Senator, while not a member of the committee, I seem to recall in the discussions of 1510-420 that the banked mill authority for localities was actually a feature added to the law. I think Senator Story got it put in there or considered it to avoid the problem of people levying all their mill authority right away and otherwise forcing everyone to spend to their max all the time. Is that something you want to leave in? Just remembering the history.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that's why we put in there bank the mill authority should be considered to look at that. But that former Senator Story is correct. I mean, that's why it was put in there, just to keep people from overspending. But on the other side, we always hear local governments folks say too, well, just we're elected, trust us, we'll spend what we need to spend, and then we're at the discretion of the voters. So it's kind of a catch-22 there. Commissioner Holmquist.
Yeah, kind of. You're right. It's kind of, they vote for local government, they get what they vote for. But I know we've talked a lot about workarounds from counties, and I'm just curious if you're thinking this is going to fix the workarounds.
It could. I don't know. I hate to speculate on any of that.
Yeah, it's just if we have a cap, and frankly, I know in the school subcommittee, they're talking about taking the cap away from the schools funding and that, and it's a concern because we start messing with something that's worked so well, and then we try to remove it. It's a concern to me because you might be okay in counties that budget conservatively and whatever, but I think you open the door for some of them to really grow their taxing authority, and that's a concern. It would be like a workaround, frankly, and only give them more options. But I just like 1510-420 if you haven't noticed.
Yeah. Well, if you have those banked mills sitting there, let's say you got 15 mills banked, and all of a sudden you decide, well, I'm going to use them. I'm going to pull them in this year. And that could increase revenue significantly too. So if we take that authority away, how often that happens, I'm not sure. Again, I think if we get too far down in the weeds here, these are just things that particularly on Senate Bill 511. Hey, another thing you need to consider is population growth adjustments, and take a look at bank mill authority. Should or shouldn't that be considered going forward? Senator McGilvery.
Just a question, is the banked mills in 1510-420 apply to the 95 state mills or not? And should that be clarified here or not?
No, yes, it does, according to the Supreme Court. That's where the state got authority to levy the full 95 mills from carryover mills from previous years. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ralph, is that correct?
That's my understanding of the Supreme Court ruling.
Should the law clarify it to remove all speculation?
I'm not, so we're working on kind of Senate Bill 511 here. Should 1510-420 clarify that? I suspect there may be some legislation coming forward about here's what the court, that's typically what we do with a lot of court cases in the legislature. See what the court's ruled, and we go back and we clarify the statute to kind of match up with the court decisions. But I'm not sure we need to throw it in here.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? All right.
So at your last meeting, you guys didn't discuss the issue of what types of property to count as newly taxable?
That was a little bit of the conversation, but we really didn't get down into the weeds about which types should be classified. We did talk about, well, maybe certain types, the percentage of classifying as a new property should be different than other classes of property.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So this is the way we're saving this one?
Looks good.
Means I didn't get to break it by typing into it.
All right, next one, let's do the study bill for SIDs.
Not open?
You need to scroll, okay.
Yeah, no, it didn't pop up. It looks like you.
So the recommendation here is just create a study bill, should be passed to gather more information on special improvement districts and the potential to limit growth. I think part of the issue we're having here, and Ralph can expand on this if you'd like, is the lack of information we have out there from local governments when it comes to SIDs and the reporting requirement to the state. And I think Legislative Fiscal Vision was having some similar issues too, and gathering all that information together. So is that kind of correct, Ralph?
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of data. And an interesting case was brought up to me the other day where you have these extra jurisdiction coverage. I think the example I heard was Billings provides fire services outside the limits of the city of Billings. So if you live in that area, you may not pay attention to the hearings in Billings, and you might not know why your fire assessment may be what it is. You have some interesting things there. So just people don't know that much about them. And we do have an issue with collecting and processing this data. I would make one recommendation. I think we're missing their growth, limit their growth, or limit SID growth. Might be a thing to add to that first sentence. And Commissioner Logan has raised his hand.
Commissioner Logan.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So just a few minutes ago, someone brought up the SIDs and relative to limitations. And as far as I can tell, there are none except the fiscal discipline of the elected body. And so I think that's an important consideration. I think it's also I think this particular recommendation is also important from the standpoint of, I think, I think there is potential. Well, someone also pointed out it's not a tax. It's not, or theoretically not supposed to be. It's an assessment on a benefit that a property receives, but quite often properties are within districts and are assessed fees, but their property gets no benefit. And currently, like for example, in the city of Helena, there's a group of property owners who are suing the city of Helena for this very thing over street maintenance districts in this particular example. So I think in the least, the idea to gather information on special districts and just the nature of them and is really important. And it's pointed out in this memo that they're only 10% of property taxes, but depending on your given property, it might make a lot of difference. So anyway, thank you.
Rhonda Wiggers.
The study bill I assume the study bill will be broad enough, but I would like to make sure that we have the ability with the study bill to look at. I noticed that it's a number, something happening at some of the planning board meetings that I've attended, where any new subdivision is required to sign off that the people who buy into that subdivision cannot oppose an SID. So to me, that seems like a really great way to come in and add more stuff later, but it's not letting the people decide what they can afford. So I'd like us to make sure that we are also being able to look at subdivision requirements as they pertain to SIDs.
So you're saying that, so all the other people within that special improvement district can oppose the SID, but the people within that new subdivision within that district cannot?
That's the way my understanding is of how that is attached, and I need to look into it more, but I've noticed it at a couple of the last ones, and 2 weeks ago I was at one that approved a subdivision, and that was one of the requirements, is that they could not oppose SIDs for 20 years.
Interesting.
And I thought that was an awful, to me, that seemed too open-ended. And I made a mental note to make sure that got put in our study bill, that we looked into how subdivisions are, the SIDs and subdivisions have a link.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the answer.
Okay. And this isn't to say there won't be some bills on SIDs. There may very well be some bills coming forward in the next legislative session. Right now, it's just, there's not a lot of information out there, so that's kind of what this helps. Although Senator McGilvery and I worked on some special improvement districts in the 21 session and made some changes there to offloading. So there very well could be some bills coming forward. Commissioner Holmquist.
Yeah, actually, good timing, because we've just we're doing some remodeling around our courthouse and our parking lots, and we got the waiver of protest to participate in a special RSID district for the future. And that doesn't set well with counties, because yeah, we're in the city, but we have no say then what happens if an RSID comes up. So it might be something that the cities are looking at. I don't know, because I know our planning documents don't have it. We make sure, and there was one bill many years ago that talked about annexation. And I know that on some of our documents we had that you couldn't be, that you could be annexed, and we changed all that it was, we can't put that in our documents without a formal annexation process. So Anyway, they had a waiver of protest on annexation a while back. You might look at that, somebody, and just see how they did that and see if we could do something about this. So, yeah, I think it's good for us to look at these because I think a lot of people don't understand them for one thing, and it's good to have that knowledge. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Any other thoughts, comments? All right.
Did we get approval on that increase, injecting the limit there growth?
I believe so. I didn't hear any other objections. Everybody thought it was a good idea.
Okay, just making sure.
Yep. All right, so bring up the next one is sunset levies. So this one is pretty straightforward. Require voter approve the mills to sunset after 10 years, except for bond levies. Currently, you can have, so if you put a voter approved levy on the ballot, you can say this only lasts for 5 years, 10 years, 12 years. I haven't seen a lot of them that do that. Most of them just go into perpetuity. There are ways that taxpayers can petition to get levies voted on. It's kind of a onerous issue. So to me, that just makes a little more sense here, just to have them sunset. It's kind of like the 6 mil levy that sunsets every 10 years, and the voters have to come back and decide whether they want to continue to fund 6 mils for the university system. So anybody got any thoughts, comments? Commissioner Holmquist.
Yeah, so I don't want that. So let's just take like a rural maintenance district and talk about that because we have a stormwater I guess project down in Big Fork that we did many years ago. And there's of course continuing maintenance on that, which benefits the whole town of well, it's not a town, it's a, rural Big Fork.
Yep.
And so if we put it out there and it gets voted down, who's going to take over the maintenance of that? Or does it not get maintained and then it fails? I mean, that's kind of a concern because there are drains and all that that need cleaned out annually. And that's one of those that we do actual costs every year and then levy them, whatever the costs were the year before, as we project forward. But if we sunset that, that's a problem. And sidewalks, any of that would be a problem. So
I would say that's what the voters want. If they don't want their roads maintained, you don't maintain them. And I think they'll fast figure it out that, oops, we made a mistake. I suspect most voters probably would continue to support things like road maintenance, law enforcement type things like that.
But if they don't, then you end up like, for instance, when Big Fork, you end up with a plugged drain, which backs up into everybody's stores or whatever. And then who are they going to come after, and yet they were the ones that voted it down. So that's a tough one.
Yeah. Justin, Ross.
So, I just wonder how this would interact with the the other recommendation to specify things in dollars rather than mills. So like, should it be that it's like say $100 million collected over 10 years? Or is it $10 million per year? Like, just, it seems like it might be that these two things need to be set to work with each other.
No, I don't think so. I mean, this should maybe just say required voter approved mill levies. Maybe not just mills, but it's more of a like Commissioner Holmquist said, we've got 10 mills out there for road maintenance. And it's just on, it's on, and then every 10 years, the voters get to decide, do I want to reapprove that 10 mills? The local government might say, well, we need 15, or now we just need 5, and you reapprove it.
No,
Things like,
I must have miscommunicated. What I'm saying is that like if the other recommendation says that instead of posting mills, it posts levies, so there's a total amount that they're supposed to do it. If that's supposed to be specified for annually, or if that's supposed to be over the sunset period.
okay, I get you. So I haven't seen, maybe Commissioner Holmquist can, or someone else, I haven't really seen where someone says, hey, we need $50 million over the next 10 years, and we'll decide when we're going to levy it. It's usually
I mean, that's exactly the way bonds work, right?
yeah, a bond definitely has to work that way.
So that's just where I'm saying it would be making it more similar to the bonds in that way too.
Yeah, that's why except for bond levies, that's not in there, of course, but
Yeah, you might not make any bond payments for 5 years and then you start making payments, etc.
yeah, so.
Yeah.
Would you, maybe if you change mills to levies in those 3 spots, then it becomes
Yeah,
more broader for either case of whatever recommendations are accepted. Although, does it broaden it too much?
no, it require voter approved levies to sunset after 10 years, except for bond levies.
Except for bonds, then for the case of bond. And then changing mills to sunset the levies or deny these. Just changing mills to levies in those 3 cases.
Yeah, I think that does that. That helps out. So change all the mills to levies.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to try to do here. I was hoping it would keep it.
Anybody else while Ralph's wordsmithing got any more comments? I can tell you what, I brought this particular bill last session. And of course, everybody who liked their favorite project did not want this to happen. So it's this type of bills is tough because whether it's the fire people, the road people, the libraries, the recreational people, they all like their levy that they worked so hard to get passed, and they don't want to see it go away. But my argument was always, this is kind of first come, first serve, and it creates voter fatigue. And if you have all these levies that may stacking up, particularly recreational type ones, it makes it harder to pass school levies. The schools were on my side on this one. They like the idea just due to levy fatigue, and a lot of other levies that were still on the books. Commissioner Holmquist, your hand's down. Did you have any more comment?
I was just thinking about the current fire district here that did pass a levy into perpetuity. And it's the first one I've seen here. Normally they're 10-year or 20-year or something like that. And I think it's a problem when they go into perpetuity on those things. I think it should be some sort of a cap or something on these voted levies, like you say, because into perpetuity is a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to throw 10 years out there, which I think 10 years is still a pretty long period of time too. So, any other comments, thoughts, suggestions? Everybody likes the change from mills to levies.
What about instead of levies to sunset after 10 years, just change the word to within 10 years?
That actually reminds me of something. Someone mentioned to me that you need to be careful with these time limits so that they coincide with the election that drive these things. So they need to be even year restrictions or periods. So, but I'm wondering if after 10 years mean 11 years, or does it mean, or does before 10 years mean 9 years, which would be a problem.
Yeah, those are all things the legislature, when they start drafting it, we'll take a look at when's the applicability date, and so because you're right, it needs to hit into the proper year. I'm not too concerned about it in our recommendation. That's something the legislature will weed out if they proceed with this. Commissioner Holmquist?
Yeah, I was just visiting with my finance again on this. So we're of course in the process of doing a large jail project, which will be a bond actually, but the operation side of it will probably be a levy. So that would probably affect our ability to keep employees, I guess, to run the place if levies are sunset when we need the people, and then we'd have to lay people off if we'd get a no vote. So didn't think about that earlier, but that's certainly something to worry about, especially with a detention facility. Anyway, just some thoughts.
No, I agree with you. I have a lot of faith in our taxpayers, though. They'll do things like that. Although I think there was somewhere, it might have been Ravalli County, some county recently had the same thing. They had a bond levy for a building and a other levy to fund the maintenance of it and personnel. One of those failed, and I can't remember which one it was. So that's always a possibility out there.
Commissioner Logan, wasn't it Helena where they approved the bond for the new firehouse, but they did not approve the operational money for a new fire station?
You got it.
Yeah. Okay. So, Commissioner, what are you guys? What's your plan?
Well, we are actually due to get some options from our staff here in, I think about a week and a half. And so the commission will hear that and decide what it is how we're gonna move forward.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that'll probably help the legislature ferret out some of this if they decide to go for that and something like this. And there may be an exception if you're looking at a maintenance levy to fund a new facility, such as a new jail or something, that you maybe need that might be an exception to the rule. And make, I don't know if you guys could have probably not floated those as a combined levy. You probably had to do them separately, did you? The bond and the maintenance separate, or
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So it might just be as simple as to changing a law that allows a combination on certain subjects. So, but anybody else got any thoughts, comments on this particular recommendation? All right, seeing none. Let's move along to the last one, truth in taxation. Because Ralph's bringing this one up. This just a reminder. This is so for those of you who had the meeting, our first meeting of this period, we had a good presentation from Utah's Truth in Taxation. It's much more broader than 1510-420, although they kind of operate under similar premises. So this just kind of goes through some of the language there. I'll give everybody a minute or two to read it, and just gives the potential of looking at this in Montana.
So I did talk to Dylan about this one. Because Eric and I were both unavailable for the last meeting. And I summarized that more along the lines of this is really 1510-420, but the mills, the sort of the base mill calculations done centrally outside the jurisdiction. That was sort of one feature about it. So the Department of Revenue, I guess, would have to calculate what the 1510-420 mills would be for the jurisdictions, given the taxable value in the mills levied the prior year. Is that an okay summary of what you were presented?
Yeah, I mean, Utah is a much simpler animal than we are because every class of property has the same tax rate. Every mill floats, except now the state fixed, I guess, I think one mill related to education that doesn't float any longer. So, I mean, this is, if the legislature passed Senate Bill 511, not sure how this would work into it at all. So I think this is just more or less, hey, Utah's got a pretty good model out there. Let's take a look at it. Could we work it into 1510-420? Not sure. Could we work it into Senate Bill 511? Not sure. Maybe some of the requirements in regards to holding the public hearing, advertising, letting people know how much their taxes are going to go up, and then giving them maybe the ability, like in Utah, where taxpayers can petition the local government to require a vote on an increase, such as a 1510-420 increase or a Senate Bill 511 increase.
And we have to hold a hearing on every one of these increases now, don't we? And Commissioner Holmquist, don't you have to? There we go.
Yep. Commissioner Holmquist.
Yeah, we do hold hearings, and I'm just trying to figure out the logistics of taking our budget to a vote. I think that would be the biggest problem with this, is trying to fit it into our budget process, because we pass our preliminary one in June and we don't know what our new appraisals, all that's going to be till the end of August, the 1510-420 formula. But I think it would be a real issue to try to take a county or city budget to a vote. I don't see how that can happen. There's plenty of time for people to come in, and we hold several hearings. We have hearings on the budget, amendments throughout the year. We have hearings all the time on what we're doing with our dollars. And I can tell you, been here 14 years, and there's probably maybe been, I don't know, one person every 5 years. It's just people don't get involved. They put you there. I hear from them later, and they put you there to make the decisions, and then they ask about it later, which I've had several of those. But it'd be difficult, very difficult to do a vote on county budgeting and city budgeting. I think I think that's insurmountable.
Well, it's not an automatic in Utah, and it didn't sound like it happened very often. It's something where the taxpayers have to petition. I don't know what the threshold is. It'd be kind of like opposition to SID or something, or a zoning district. I suspect you got to get a certain number of taxpayers to sign a petition. They again go to the government and say, "Hey, look, we don't agree with this. You need to take it to a vote." And
yeah, SIDs are easy. I mean, you definitely. I think you should have votes on SIDs. In fact, I think that's a good thing. But right now, a lot of it's just, public hearings and move forward. So, yeah.
I'm trying to find my bill number from last session, which I passed, which it doesn't seem to me that any local government is following the law now. I was trying to get after this particularly truth in taxation, where on your preliminary budget, you need to tell everybody how much taxes are going up on $100,000, $300,000, and a $600,000 home in your preliminary budget. Well, the pushback was, well, we don't have the certified numbers yet. And so my pushback was, well, you've got preliminary numbers, you kind of know where you're at. And generally, the difference between preliminary and certified at the end of August is not a significant change. That's at least what most local governments are telling me. You may get into a big issue when you have some centrally assessed piece of property that's under appeal or something. But
Yeah,
generally,
and you just don't know what's being left on the table either, you know.
Right.
That's why I say it's just kind of all a guessing game until things are finalized the end of August. But usually you're pretty close. You come real close.
so the gist of my bill was to get people's attention and maybe get them more involved in your budgeting process.
Well,
So
good luck.
if you tell me like, oh, my taxes are going to go up $400 on my $500,000 home,
Yeah.
you may have got my attention, and I might show up at the city commission or the county commission and say, what's going on here, guys? Why do you need to raise my taxes so much?
Frankly, I wish they would.
I know.
Wish they would show up often. I'd love it.
Yeah, because all you hear is complaints after the fact.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And then you can educate them a little bit, you know, on just how much goes to the county. Yeah. Anyway,
Senator, are you referring to Senate Bill 123? Additional taxes?
That sounds like too low a number here. Require ballot, no. Senate Bill 123 is require a ballot for bond election to estimate additional. Now that was just changing the 100,000, 200,000, I think, up to 100, 300, and 600, which passed. I think it's down lower in the 200s. I'm looking through my bill list right now.
So am I. And
Okay.
I saw Miss Johnson had her hand up for a minute, and I think it went back down. I think
Senate
her
Bill-
connection goes up and down
Okay.
also.
Senate Bill 332. Require property tax increase information to be included in budget discussions.
Okay.
That's the House 8315 and the Senate 45-5. So a lot of support for that idea, but it's not seen to be getting put into place. So gonna have to reach out to the league and Mako and say, okay, guys. And some local governments aren't even aware of it.
I've just put it in the chat.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this Utah truth and taxation model? Heck, and maybe legislators think it's such a good idea like Utah does, and they one tax rate for all classes of property, and they'll pull all that together and we'll have a simple system, everything floats, and it would make things a lot easier for everybody. But I suspect that's a pretty big change for us to accomplish now. Wishful thinking, though. All right. So no other thoughts or comments on this one. All right. So let's, as we work through this, let's go to public comment on any of the draft recommendations. So folks out there.
Did we get every single one? It looks like we did all 6.
We did. Yep.
Dollars, affirmative. Okay.
So it looks like our first public commenter is Robert Story.
And I'm going to unshare, I think. There we go.
Hey, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Thanks.
Barely.
Oh. Let me get my computer over here where I'm talking to it instead of my other screen. Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So on the first recommendation to require 60% vote to pass, I think that blended with the Education Committee's plan to bring the bonding language into the mill levy elections. Probably those two tend to work together and probably accomplish the same purpose that you're headed for there. And the details can be worked out. On the second one, I agree with the concept of putting the levies in dollar amounts instead of mills. That will accomplish the purpose of limiting tax increases on people in jurisdictions that have growing tax bases. It will increase the taxes on those that have shrinking tax bases some, but they compensate for that already under the current law. I mean, the current law is if your tax base is growing, you vote mills, and if your tax base is shrinking, you vote dollars. And so this will put everybody in the same boat of voting dollars, and the mills will adjust to accomplish the revenue needs. There is some discussion that this would be subject to the caps. It's not. These levies are in 1510-425, and that sectional law is not subject to 1510-420. So if you want new voted levies to be to have an inflation adjustment, which is really all that would happen, and have access to new property, you would have to subject to 1510-420 or Senate Bill 511, whichever is your final method of dealing with that. So if you just left that section said all mill levies would be in dollar amounts, then as new property came on, mill levies would reduce, and as values went up due to reappraisal or a reappraisal of all classes of property, mill levies would reduce. And if values went down, they would increase. So I think all you need to decide there is if you want to subject them to what other mechanism you have, which might be counter to where you're headed. It might allow them to grow more than you want them to. Third, Senate Bill 511. If you're going to deal with population adjustment, you need to figure out how you're going to deal with negative population growth in that concept. I think eliminating the bank mills, at least going forward, is a good idea. And if you don't eliminate them, then you need to bank dollars and not mills, so that when you bank right now, if you bank a mill and it's worth $1,000, you might unbank it when it's worth $1,200. So, something to think about there if you're going to continue with the bank mill concept. Again, and if you do Senate Bill 511, you need to decide, what new levies are subject to it and how that would be handled. I'm a little confused on your discussion in number 4, whether you're talking about special improvement districts or special purpose districts. And I think I've mentioned before that sometimes those terms get used interchangeably, and they are two separate animals. I know the commissioner was talking about special improvement districts, and Ms. Carpenter or Ms. Wiggers was talking about special improvement districts, which are functions of subdivisions generally. And when you create a subdivision and you want to put in the infrastructure, you set up a special improvement district and pay for the infrastructure, usually with bonds to do that. And then everyone that buys a lot has an assessment on their tax bill to pay off those bonds, and maybe even some O&M work. So that's a special improvement district. If you're starting about a special purpose district, like a street district in a town, or a lighting district, or a library district, or a museum district, or fire district, all of those types of districts, they're different. So I don't know if that's what you want to study And that's kind of what the problem is with gathering data right now is the special purpose districts, figuring out how they vote or budget and deal with things. So I think you need to clarify number 4. And I really think what you want to talk about are special purpose districts. If you want to do another study on special improvement districts, that's well within your means also. But I think as far as limiting growth in government spending, it has to do with more of these special purpose districts than the SIDs or the rural SIDs. I mean, I have a great concern that many of the special purpose districts don't even know 1510 420 exists, and there's no enforcement or supervision mechanism on that or on Senate Bill 511 to have somebody say you're exceeding the law and you can't levy that much money. I think the only time anyone ever tried to do that was up in Glacier County, and the court said the objector didn't have standing. So, the county commissioners really don't want to take that job on, even though every one of those budgets has to come through their office before they're finally approved. But somebody needs to be looking over the shoulders, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the truth and taxation law. Sunsetting the levies. I think you got that one worked around when you changed the mills to levies in that one. But I think you need to understand, I think that you're only talking about local government levies, Title VII levies. I don't know if you want to get into school district operating levies under Title 20. It used to be up until maybe 10 years ago, or maybe longer than that now as time flies by, that schools had to vote every year to get their annual operating levy that was above the 80% of their budget line. And so schools were running a levy election every year just to get the money back that they had last year and maybe some growth. And that caused a lot of confusion amongst taxpayers with why are you always every year asking us for a tax increase when basically they were asking for the authority to spend the money that was approved to spend in previous years. And so the legislature changed that law and allowed school levies to be, once they were passed, to be in place, to stay in place, because school budgets are governed by the Title 20 law and are driven by enrollment and things like that. So they go up and down depending on what the legislature gives schools for inflation adjustments, and even to use all of a school's inflation adjustment, they many times have to have a voted levy to get, if they have you gave them a 3% increase this year, and if they were at their maximum dollar amount that they'd approved the previous year, they had to vote a new levy to spend part of the inflation adjustment that you gave them. And so I just think if you're talking about sunsetting levies, you need to probably restrict it to the local government levies in Title VII. I think there are 2 good points of the truth and taxation law out of Utah that you should consider adopting. The one is it requires their public hearings on budgets to be held in the evening so people at work can attend them. So I think they have to have them like at 6 o'clock at night or something like that. And the second thing Mr. Franklin talked about is Utah's Department of Revenue, or Tax Commission that they're called there. They calculate the maximum levy for every jurisdiction, whether it be a city, a county, a fire district, a library district, or whatever. And that takes that out of the hands of local officials to have to do that. The department currently has all that information that they need to do that, I believe. And that's kind of been a discussion going on in Montana since for the last year or so. The Department of Administration has always handled the worksheet that counties and cities and all these other districts are supposed to use to calculate their maximum levies. The Department of decided they didn't want to do that anymore, so they shut that operation down and Mako took it over. So right now, the worksheet is being managed by the Association of Counties. And that, I don't know if they particularly want to do it. It's just nobody else was going to do it. And so it might want to be the legislature investigates working with the Department of Revenue to have them do that calculation, whether it's in Senate Bill 511 or 1510 420 at some point in the future. And they just send that out to every taxing jurisdiction as here's your maximum that you can levy without a vote. And that solves a lot of problems with especially the smaller districts that maybe are or are not complying with the law currently. So with that, thank you for the opportunity and the good work that you've been doing.
Thank you, Ms. Story. Any other public comment? Please raise your hand out there if you'd like to comment. One more call for public comment. Please raise your hand. All right, I don't see anybody out there. So we will move back around to committee discussion and vote on recommendations. So I just want to remind the people voting on these recommendations are just committee members of this subcommittee. It's Galt, Baha, Cotton, Logan, McGilvery, Ross, Smith, and Hertz. And what I'll probably do is we'll go through each one of these and going to have Commissioner Galt will move them forward, and then we'll have discussion, and then we'll go to a committee vote. And probably what I'll do, depending on if there's some objections out there or not, I might just do what I did last time without objection. We will move this particular recommendation forward just to kind of speed up the process so we're not taking a roll call vote. So, all right, so let's go back. If let's just take them in order that we did before. So Commissioner Galt, if you would like to move that 60% affirmation recommendation, that would be helpful.
Mr. Chairman, I move to forward the 60% affirmative vote to pass new voter approved levies as amended to the full PTAC on July 8th, 2024.
Thank you. And then Ralph, do you want to bring these up? Because we edited some of those. So if you could bring that one up so we can kind of see exactly the language.
Let's see. Is that the right one up?
Yep, that's the right one up. And as you can see in the rationale, we edited that to change it to increasing consensus and voter education could ensure that property taxes align with community values and stay within the bounds of the community's ability to pay for it. Does anybody else have any thoughts, concerns on the language that we got now? Okay, don't see any hands up here. So without objection, I'd like to move this forward to the committee of the whole. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so that one moved forward without objection. Let's move up the next one, the new mills only as dollars and not mills. Commissioner Galt?
Mr. Chairman, I move to forward the voted mills restricted to dollar amounts rather than mill amounts as amended to the full PTAC meeting on July 8th.
All right, so we've got, Ralph's got that one up. You can see the highlighted language that we put in there. I won't read through it. I think everybody can read here on the screen.
This is the only thing we actually changed. We struck some language, but I don't think it matters.
Anybody have any thoughts, comments on the language at all there? Seeing none. So without objection, we'd like to move this forward. And all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Oh, okay, so that one will move forward. Next one up, Commissioner Galt, if you'd like to move that forward, would be the modifications to Senate Bill to 1510-420 with Senate Bill 511.
Mr. Chairman, I move to forward the Senate Bill 511 concept to the full PTAC meeting on July 8th, 2024.
Okay. And I don't believe we had any wordsmithing on this one. Mr. Sawyer brought up about the negative population potential growth. I think that's probably getting a little bit too much in the weeds. I think that's something the legislature will basically flesh out when they go through a proposal like this. Items like that will come up and get discussed about negative growth. So any thoughts, comments at all on this one the way we have it? Okay, so without objection, I would like to move this one forward also. Everybody say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so that one moves forward too. Next one up would be the a study bill on special improvement districts.
Mr. Chairman, I move to forward the study bill on special improvement districts to the full PTAC on July 8th, 2024.
All right, so Ralph, you want to bring that one up?
I think I have it up.
You do. All right, so with Mr. Story's comments, and I would concur with him, maybe we should just change the language to gather information on special districts.
I think
I
that's
concur.
yeah, perfect.
Because I think it makes sense to see both special improvement and special purpose districts gather a little more information on both of them. But Mr. Story's right. The special purpose districts are the ones where the local governments are kind of offloading some general fund expenditures. But Senator McGilvery and I have put some sideboards on that in the past. Okay, so Ralph's got special districts and he's got special purpose districts and SIDs in parentheses, and we added their growth to limit their growth. So any other thoughts, comments, changes? Ralph's still editing here a little bit.
I'm just going to change everything to special district. Actually, probably shouldn't be capitalized either.
I don't know.
That make sense?
Yep.
You change that one.
God. I think I got everything.
Up above, you want to decapitalize special districts up there too.
And let me check. Someone may have just sent me. Okay, no.
Special districts, yeah, that should be special districts. All right, so let's everybody take a minute and maybe read through it and see if we missed anything.
It's one more in the next paragraph. SIDs currently represent about 10%.
Thank you.
I think you got them all.
You just want to take out that crossed out improvement in the first recommendation.
Okay, I just wanted it explicit that we took it out.
And then all of these will be in much better shape when we see them at the July 8th meeting. And then again, take our time, and as we move forward today till next Monday, if everybody wants to, we'll get these out back to everybody, and then you can look at them, see if there's any more wordsmithing we might want to do at the July 8th meeting. So I think we've got everything changed here. So without objection, I'd like to move this particular recommendation forward to the committee of the whole. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? So that one will move forward too. So next one, Ralph, you want to bring up the Commissioner Galt, could you please move the require voter approved levies to sunset after 10 years?
Mr. Chairman, I move to forward the 10-year sunset on voter approved levies to the full PTAC on July 8th, 2024.
Thank you. So on this one, as you recall, we changed mills to levies throughout the document. And Mr. Story talked about exempting schools. I think that's getting a little too far down into the weeds. That's probably something that the legislature will discuss. And I know they will discuss about schools and potentially other, particularly levies that we had already discussed, such as happened in Helena, approving a building, but then not approving the maintenance and maintaining and the employment part of it. So those are all things that will get further into the weeds with the legislature if they take this up. Any other comments, thoughts on this one? Okay, seeing none, so without objection, I recommend we move this to the July 8th meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so that one will move forward. And then finally, the truth in taxation.
Mr.
Galt?
Chairman, I move to forward the truth in taxation model to the full PTAC on July 8th, 2024.
All right, so Mr. Story had some very good comments, I believe, and as I had discussed a little bit, there's probably some information and the ways that Utah is doing things that we might be able to pull out of the Utah's truth in taxation and insert into 1510-420 or Senate Bill 511. So I think it makes sense kind of to look at this whole model and see what we might be able to do with it. So my recollection is according to my notes, we didn't have any edits at all on here, did we, Ralph?
No, we did not. Although Word tells us we should say broader instead of more broad, but I'm going to leave it.
Okay. All right.
So given the language you just mentioned, the recommendation is very narrow. We should adopt the Utah model. Do you want it that narrow?
No, we probably should not. Montana should
Consider
adopting portions of the Utah's truth and taxation model.
Is it law or model?
Probably law.
And beautiful. It brings it to one line.
Anybody have any further edits on that? Okay, seeing none. So without objection, we will move this forward as amended to the committee of the whole. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, so we'll move that one forward too. So thank you, everybody. It was a good meeting. And as I just discussed, next Monday, July 8th, 1 p.m., the committee of the whole will work. Ralph will get these put together in their final version. We'll get them emailed out to everybody, and I'm sure they'll be posted online too for the July 8th meeting. If you have any more words you'd like to do, please communicate that to myself and Ralph.
So let me ask for some clarification.
Yes.
Do you want Word versions to go to the local government subcommittee members, or do you want these cleaned up ones where we take out the annotations here and just send it to everyone so they have it in advance?
I would prefer they were cleaned up and send them to everybody.
So all PTAC members.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Guess you can work with Budget Director Osmondson, and once we get our final, well, once you get these completed, then he can get them up on your guys' agenda for the committee of the whole and post. We'll have more time to discuss on July 8th, and if we have any editing, I'm sure there'll be some discussion. Obviously, between the 60% affirmative vote on levies, we'll have to kind of work that through with what the Education Subcommittee is recommending on theirs too, and any of these others that might overlap onto other recommendations. So with that, we got anything else, Ralph? I think we're done here.
No, sir. I'm good.
All right, well, thanks everybody for the meeting, and we'll see everybody on Monday at 1 p.m. either in person or on Zoom.
Yeah, and it's the budget conference room, budget office conference room this time.
Okay, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Take care.